Okay, we're over here at the paint station. We're going to start painting this guy today. So we're just going to separate all the pieces out here. Get rid of his cigarette. Now, I use these to hold my pieces. They're just pieces of wood with a cut off the head of a sheet metal screw and drill a hole, stick them down in there and epoxy them in place. And then I can just screw them up in there. Gives you something good to hang on to when you're painting. Okay, so the first thing I do is to dunk him in the water over here. And I want you to notice something after I do this. See, watch this color on his face when I do this. Right now it's just sort of a flat, light tan. Now notice how the color changed. Now it's a yellowish tan, a lot deeper color. Okay, now if you took a human body, I've told you this before when painting, if you took a human body and you drained it of all the blood, that's the color that it would be. You've probably seen, going to school, things in a jar of formaldehyde. Well, that's about what they look like. That's the color that they were, totally drained of any kind of blood. All right? So that's a color, and you have to take that into consideration when you paint the way I'm going to paint here. You can't go slapping on some house paint and try to hit that flesh color. And if you use a solid color flesh, you know, you run down to the store and hobby shop and you buy a tube of this paint that says flesh and paint it on there. Basically, that's what you're doing. You might as well go get some house paint and paint it, because it's just going to cover everything. And I'll tell you something else. If you do that, take that bottle of flesh that you bought down at the hobby shop or Hobby Lobby or wherever you get it, and when you get it home, go into the bathroom and hold it up to your face. What you might even do is stick your finger in it and just kind of make a smudge on your cheek and see if it matches your flesh tone. It won't. It just will not do that. But we're going to come pretty close to it matching, doing it the way I do it. Okay, my piece of wood is wet, so when I put paint on it, it's going to draw some of that paint down into the wood itself. Okay, it's not going to sit on the surface. It's going to pull it into the paint, or pull it into the wood. So to make my flesh tones, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some blood. Now this is red iron oxide, great color. So I'm going to squeeze me out a little bit of that. This is, says antique, but it's yellow ochre, okay? Shake it up a little.
Okay.
Put that back together. Get my big brush here. Now we're going to mix this together. Now you notice I got my brush clean. There's hardly no paint in there right now. So I'm going to get some water on it again. Just pick up a little bit of that paint test it on his neck. Looks kind of orange to me. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm painting with watercolors. Now it looks a little yellow. Now you notice also that I'm not too concerned about splashing that color over on the other areas, because this is a light color compared to what's going to be coming next. Maybe not next, but coming along later. Just washing it on there. Now I'm going to stop. I'm not going to let that color go any higher than about right there. Because if he's wearing a hat, which he is, on a sunny day, that sun's not going to hit these areas up here. So that just that pale yellow color will work out just right. Now he's out in the sun, so anything that projects away from the face is going to catch more sun. So we're going to indicate that. And the farther it projects, the more sun will get. So out there on the tip of his nose and his nostrils, it's going to get a lot of sun. Plus, he might have been down at the saloon and got him a couple shots of red eye. Out here on his cheekbones, right there. Give him a little sun there. Down here on his lips, he didn't get any sun, but the lips are a little red. Lips are a little too red, so I'm going to take my brush, dip it in the water, and kind of wash out some of that color there. That looks a lot better. Give him a little color on his nose here, because he had several shots of red eye down there at the saloon. Forgot one thing, I didn't paint his ears. But he's shooting up the hill. I think it's the sheriff's office. They got a firing range up there. Everything looks kind of yellow in here because the light I have over here on my left-hand side is a warm light, where the light I have above me is a cold light, and the light I have in here is kind of in between. So this is catching a lot of that yellow light. That's why it's changing. But if I moved it out here, that yellow's toned down just a little. That looks good. I'm going to take some of this darker color and put it right here in his ear. Little shadow there. Looks good. I paint on a piece of glass because it's easy to clean up. And once your paint dries on there, after you walk away from it, you can come back the next day and get you an old blade and just scrape it right off. Okay, now, next comes this color, Midnight Blue. Now I'm going to use it to shade his eyes and his cheeks, and I already see another mistake. Right there. Okay, back to this. Midnight Blue. Needs to be shaken up. Now, you might think, gee, it's not very much. That is way too much. And I found something, there's hardly any left in here. I've put some water in there to kind of stretch it out a little farther. And I went down to the hobby shop, Hobby Lobby, to buy me some new paint. And I went in there and I looked, excuse me, went in there and I looked for a color of Midnight Blue. Got it back here, opened it up, and looked in there after I squeezed some. And I says, well, that's not Midnight Blue. You can't see it so much here, but there's definitely a difference between these two colors. This color has some gray in it, or something in there that makes it opaque, where this color is transparent. Fortunately, I went back a couple days later and I found this Folk Art Midnight Blue, which is the right color. See how deep it is? Deep dark color, and it's transparent, and that's what I want. So if you're looking for Midnight Blue, get Folk Art. That's the good Midnight Blue. Don't get craft paint. Anita. I guess Anita's kind of colorblind or something. Anyway, I bought me 2 bottles of this, so I'd have some, wouldn't run out. Because I don't use it. I don't use very much of it, but it's an important color to me, and I want to make sure I got some. Okay. So I'm going to pull out just a little of this blue here. Just about that much right there. And I'm going to paint his eyes, and that was way too much. That's about right. That's too much. So I'm going to clean my brush out, go back in here and kind of wipe out some of that color. Okay? I'm going to go back in and get me some more, and then we're going to shade his face here. Cowboys took pride in their appearance. So you see a cowboy, if he's got a beard, well, then he's got a beard. If he's got a mustache, he's got a mustache. But you won't see very many of them walking around unshaven unless they're just coming in off a night duty or something like that, because they took pride in their appearance. That's why I don't take a gouge and sit there and rough up his cheeks to try to indicate that he's hadn't shaved in a while. Some more color there. I mean, that gives him a nice appearance, and it's not overboard. It creates a 5 o'clock shadow, but it's light enough to where it just doesn't look unattractive. There, he's looking pretty good now. Okay. Next color is asphaltum. This is a real rich brown. There's all different colors of browns. There's burnt umber, but to me it's a dead color. It's brown, but it's opaque brown. It's just not a pretty color. To where asphaltum is a rich brown color, kind of like, well, it's lighter than coffee, but it's transparent, a lot more transparent than this, which is what I want. I like colors that are transparent, that let that wood show back through again. And if you need certain colors, you can take black and you can mix it with this and get a nice color for painting real deep shadows, say on a hat or something like that. But for hair on my boys, I always use asphaltum. It's a funny name. For a brown color, you'd think asphalt would be pretty black, but it's not this color anyway. All right, I need a good brush. I found these brushes down at Hobby Lobby. Princeton brush, Elite Princeton brush. They're kind of pricey, but they're good brushes. They hold a point and they'll last you a long time. These brushes here I bought 20 years ago at least, if not longer than that, and I'm still using them. They're my favorite brush. Every once in a while I will take them and, you know, really put some, well, Judy said soap. It's another thing. Keep some of this handy. You can find this at the Hobby Lobby too. It's just a big old block of soap in here that'll help you keep your brushes clean. But even doing that, every once in a while, you have to, you know, take your brush down to the main cleaner, and they'll work on it. I'll show you here real quick the best brush cleaner around, and that's your wife's hairspray. Sounds stupid, but it works, believe me. I'll show you here. Just shake it up. Get you find a spot here. spray some out. Get your puddle of it there. Take your brush. Now this is a pretty clean brush. I keep my brushes fairly clean. But anyway, take it and just start rolling it like that. Back and forth. That way you're not messing with the fiber or the hairs on the brush, but you're rolling that, working that stuff into the ferrule. And that's going to get out. See, look at the dirt coming out of there. See it? Because that paint, you know, as much as we try to wash our brushes, we don't ever get it back up in there where the hair meets the ferrule of the brush. And that's where that paint clogs up. You're never going to get it all out of there, but you're going to get most of it out of there. And then you can just wash it out with water. And then kind of clean it out in your little tub here, because this probably has some kind of conditioner in there to make the hair fibers soft. And then just kind of reform it as much as you can. This one's just about beyond reforming, but see, like you can still see the hair or the paint way back up here in the ferrule. And I've used this brush so much that out here on the end, it don't have a point anymore. See, it's just fuzzed out. But it's a good brush. A lot of life left in it. Anyway, these are good brushes. Now I put this paint on pretty straight. When I'm working in big areas like this, what I do is outline it first. Or I can come back and get quite a bit of paint in my brush and then just paint that area. And with my wood being damp, it's not wet anymore, it's just damp. It's not going to dry and leave a hard line that you would get if you put your paint on straight. See, like that, looks good. And those burn lines stop that paint from crawling over into the other area and leave you a real crisp break between the colors. Someday those boys up there bring along their AK-47s and it sounds like World War up there at that firing range. So you can see where I'm going with this, so I'm going to go ahead and paint the rest of this. It's just, you know, putting it on there and being careful. not to go over the line, because if you go over the line, that's your fault, because that paint or that burnt line's going to do its job and stop it. Okay, so I'll be back here in a little bit. Okay, he's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to paint the eyes. Now, first thing people do when they get ready to paint the eyes is they grab this white paint to paint the main part of the eyeball. Well, don't do that. Go down and buy you a tube of, this one's called parchment. It's a white, but it's a off-white. It's off just enough that it's going to give you a better color and not as harsh as that white paint there. People's eyeballs surrounding the iris just aren't white. So just take a little of that. It's plenty. Get you a super fine brush. That one looks pretty fine. Put my close-up glasses on. Here's another thing I found out. A lot of people wear these things on their head with the little magnifiers. I have them up there, but I don't use them anymore. I went down to the local Dollar General, and over there in the cheap reading glass section you can buy, I think there's about 3 different magnifications. This one is 3.25. That's the highest. The next one down is 2 something, and below that's 1 something. But these work great for me. So I just take my glasses off, put these on, and I can see up real close. So when I'm doing the eyes, what I like to do ahead of time is get my little hair dryer here and dry everything out. And then get just the smallest amount of white paint on there. And you don't even have to worry about getting that paint into the corners, because if you look at a person's eyes over there in the corner, you'll see a little blood reddish color. So if you get it that close, that's certainly good enough. And then once you get that painted, come back with some more paint and just touch right there in the center. So then we do the next one here. You just don't want to get it, you don't want to touch anywhere, you don't want to touch your black line, you don't want to touch anything outside of the eyeball when you're doing this, so just take your time. There we go. And then dry that. black. I only use black for the iris. Because when you get down to this scale, this level of a person this small, you're not going to see any color in their eyes. You're going to see a dark spot. Unless they have one of these real bleached out blue eyes. But my cowboy don't have that kind of eye. But anyway, so I just use black. Now get me a toothpick with a sharp point on it, a nice sharp point. And just give me a little bit of color on the end like that. I'm going to touch it right there. And what I'm doing is indicating where the iris is more than anything. I'm making sure I've got it in the right spot before I enlarge it, okay? And I can enlarge it with my little brush. And to do that, I'm going to squeeze out all the water. Especially up here, because when you wash your brush, that water gets clear up in here. And you'll wipe away all that water on your brush, and you'll dip it in the paint, and you'll get down to paint a real critical area. And that water that was up here that you didn't wipe is going to go down there, and it's just going to go just screw everything up. So make sure you get rid of all the water. That's about all I want right there. Looks good. Judy says thank you because I'm not sitting here doing all this. So we finished his head right now, except for that little brown spot that needs to be painted. Right there. Just look it over close. Don't want any holidays. That's what my friend used to call them. Holidays, little white spots that show up after you've done everything and you think you're finished. Looks good. Now as I dried this with my hair dryer, the colors kind of went flat. Well, they'll come back to life again. When I varnish them. See there? See them come back to life? I'm not talking about the shine, I'm talking about the depth of the color. The varnish will make them look nice. Not linseed oil. Varnish. I would never put linseed oil on one of my carvings. Ever. Spot right in here needs to be fixed. Okay. And the way I do eyes, once this all dries, I'll come back again with a toothpick and a little bit of clear epoxy that I've mixed together. And I'll put a little bitty drop of epoxy right on that iris, on each iris. And what it will do is it'll make a little globe that's almost like a glass eye. And you can see right now, because that paint is still fairly wet, or it's on there pretty thick, you can see that white spot move around. Can you see that? That's what you want. That's a sign of life in your carving. It's not a doll eye. It's a live eye. And believe me, it makes your carving just look that 100% better. That white spot just follows everybody looking at your carving. Not white spot, that reflection. Okay? Alrighty, so we've finished his head. And he's looking pretty good. So I think that's going to be it for today. In the next video we'll do his hat and the rest of his body, hopefully. So until then, I'll talk to you later. Here's a little postscript. After we shut the camera off, Judy said, well, his face isn't shielded from the sun. And I said, well, I mean, after I put his hat on. Let me put his hat on again. She said, well, his face isn't shielded from the sun. And I said, well, watch this. Notice, no sun up here. It's catching the high points here, here, here. That's the way it is out there on the prairie. So, let's don't have any criticism from the peanut section sitting behind me with the camera. And again, until next time, I'll talk to you later.